What is decluttering? Is it something we really need to do? Which things in our lives should we be decluttering regularly? And which things should we be decluttering but we generally forget? I am Ree from mummyof4.com. Thank you for joining me for this little chat, because today I want to answer all of these questions and more. We're briefly going to go into why I find decluttering helpful in my life, and then talk about the things, both physical and non-physical, that a lot of us forget that we need to declutter. But when it's done, it feels so great and it makes our lives so much easier. So let's start with the basics. What is decluttering? It's just the simple act of getting rid of things that don't actually serve us. Decluttering has been massive in recent years. You think of Marie Kondo, the home edit, and it's just about only having the things in our lives, in our homes, in our space, and in our minds that actually help us and spark joy, if you're talking about Marie Kondo. Now, I find that the acts of decluttering can help me be more productive, just because I actually got the things I need where I need them, and I'm not sifting through a whole load of stuff and quite simply wasting time every day. I find it's less stressful when it's done. Decluttering is a constant process, and I'm not pretending that I am there or the finished product or the least cluttered person in the world, but I'm definitely a lot further on than I used to be. And I know when I was younger and I just had my first one or two children, my whole life did feel a lot more cluttered. I feel the more that I've decluttered and streamlined, and not just physical things, but systems and processes and emotional and non-physical things as well, then my life has got less stressful, even though I've got a lot more children. So therefore a lot more to do. I do find it helps with improved mental clarity. So by having less on your cognitive load because you've decluttered the things you don't need, or just less stuff around you, I personally find it helps me in order to just think better and know what I should be doing in the days, and spend a lot less time just thinking I should be doing something. What is that? So a lot of that time, that wasted time that I could either be using to do something productive or rest and relax and be with my children. I do actually find I'm a lot more creative when there's less clutter around as well. I find it so hard to concentrate in my work environment when it is cluttered. So when I've got a nice clear desk to start, I actually get more work done. I'm definitely more creative. Are you the same? Do you find clutter actually stunts your creativity a little bit when you're trying to work, you're trying to come up with ideas, you're trying to produce work, or even get things done in a non-work sense, like around the home, things with your children? Do you think you're more creative when you've got a less cluttered space? So I feel more creative, it helps me concentrate. I feel more motivated because I feel like if my environment is in order, I feel like I've got my stuff together that a little bit more. So I do feel more motivated to keep going with that. And the less cluttered and organised my life is, the more likely I am to want to keep it that way. It's when it goes on a bit of a slippery slope that it feels like too much of a mountain to climb to put it back. And again, I am not just talking about rooms and keeping the house tidy here. Stay tuned, because there is a whole load of stuff I've decluttered in my life and I'm still in the process of doing that's made all the difference. And only a fraction of that is physical stuff. Decluttering can also have an impact on your well-being and just how you are feeling and your mood. If your environment is a nice place to be, your mood is likely to improve. If your head is decluttered, then that will have a positive impact on your mental health. If there is less you're expected to do because you have decluttered some of the constraints on your life and the pressures on you, then you're going to feel better. So there are just so many reasons that I love decluttering. And when I say I love decluttering, what I really mean, and you'll know this if you've watched any of my vlogs or decluttering videos, but what I really mean is I love when decluttering has been done. Decluttering is a bit of a process, and at some point during the decluttering process, whenever I start a new project, I always think, oh, what have I done? What have I done? I don't want to do this. Someone else finish it for me. Send help. But I'm always so glad when it's done. Let's move on to some things that we should probably all be decluttering, myself included. I'm aware it's a process, and definitely when you've got families and busy lives, there are things that can seep back into your home, into your lives, into your schedule that need constant decluttering. So it's more like a cycle than a one and done kind of thing. It's like a rinse and repeat kind of exercise. Obviously, the first thing we can declutter is physical things. If you've watched my wardrobe switchover videos, then every time it is a new season and it's time to get the summer stuff out and put away the winter stuff or vice versa, that's a really good opportunity for me to declutter our wardrobes. I go through the children's clothes and find things that don't fit them anymore or have got holes in them and then can be donated to like clothes bank, things like that. By getting rid of things that we're not wearing, we're not using, it frees up that space in our wardrobes and everything in there feels shiny and new. I did a little declutter a little while back of Zara's bookshelf, and I just had a little swap around and I moved the books onto a different shelf and I took away all the really babyish books. I kept some really precious ones that I loved reading, but really they had so many books and they were board books, they were really big chunky books, and we donated them, the ones that they've not looked at for a long time, and they really are baby books for very early readers, and we donated them to the school. So the school was so grateful for those books, and Zara afterwards was saying, "Mummy, thank you for my new books, my new library," she was calling it. And it was so lovely because actually there were fewer books there on those shelves than when we started, and none of them were new, but it felt shiny and new to her, and suddenly everything on there was exciting and it applied to her. I'd moved things that didn't apply, I'd donated, I moved books that didn't belong in there because they were a bit advanced for her into the other rooms. And I did the same for Bella's bookshelf, and suddenly she felt like she had all these new books because we'd passed over the books that were no longer suitable for her and put them in Zara's room. So although there were fewer books in the house, everybody felt like they had new things. I feel the same when I get out my summer clothes. I've put away winter things. I decluttered things that really did not belong in my wardrobe anymore. They didn't fit, they had holes in them, whatever. They were just gone a bit picky and they'd gone to recycling. And suddenly, twice a year, I feel like I've got new clothes when I've bought nothing, which is amazing. This is the power of decluttering. And then obviously decluttering spaces in your home, things like toys that you can put together, sets of things that actually belong together, donate or sell things that your children have outgrown, they no longer need. Decide what you are going to keep and store that because it really is precious and it's got memories, and just really only keep the stuff that matters and then store that neatly, perhaps out the way in the attic or in a storage unit. And then your children will feel like they have new toys. You can use toy rotation. I do this quite frequently where we've got toys up in high calyx unit and then I swap them around to what the children have got to access and play with, and suddenly they've got new toys again. But it's by getting rid of stuff that it creates the space to have proper sets of things. The children are so much more likely to play with an engaged set of things and toys than they would be if it was just a box of jumbled stuff. I could go on about what we can physically declutter in the home all day long, and I've got a whole decluttering playlist on my YouTube channel if you are interested in just decluttering with me. It's a process. I've got lots more areas in my house to declutter, and when I finish those, there'll be new ones. It's a whole thing. So make sure you are subscribed to my YouTube channel with bell notifications on if you want to see some more real life physical decluttering. But for now, we're going to move on to some non-physical things that we all need to declutter. Like I said, myself included, I'm not exempt from this. I'm very much talking to myself with a lot of these things I've either done recently or still need to do. So one of them is digital clutter. And this can look like deleting old emails. There's nothing more stressful. Maybe some people don't get stressed by it, but there's nothing more stressful for me than just seeing that you've literally got 1,000 emails you need to read. I like to personally only mark something as read when I've dealt with it. I don't read an email, or I would mark it back as unread until I have physically dealt with that email. And then when it is marked as unread or deleted, then obviously I've dealt with it if that's replying to something for work or something for the school, whatever it might be. If you've got so many emails to go through, and I've got to admit my emails do mount up, and sometimes I'll have 100 emails I've got to deal with, and I find that really stressful because I know I've got to do it, sitting there like on my mental to-do list, like I really need to deal with this, really need to deal with this. And actually decluttering that and going through it makes me feel so much better, and it just takes another thing off my list, physically taken off my list, or just another kind of mental to-do list thing that can be removed. A really good way to do this is just to unsubscribe from things. I think so many of us get emails from things that we just don't use anymore. a company that maybe you bought from once for a particular type of something your children needed for school and never going to need again, and they still email you every week. That is adding to your digital clutter, and it just might be a tiny thing. If you just go through and unsubscribe from all these things that you don't actually need, then that's going to ease up your digital clutter and ultimately take things off your to-do list. It might only take a few seconds at a time to delete those emails, but if they're not coming through, that's a few seconds saved. And if you add that up over time, that is spare time that you could be chilling out and relaxing. Another one is unused apps. I think our phones can be a little bit cluttered. Maybe you've still got an app on your phone about breastfeeding. It's not even the same phone as you had when you were breastfeeding your children many years ago, but because every time we update our phones, everything from our old phone goes back over, then maybe you've got apps on there that you haven't looked at in such a long time. You can actually scroll through and see when apps were last used. You can delete old apps. You can offload old apps. This will save storage space on your phone. It will save storage space in your iCloud and just have less for you to go through. So if everything on your phone, every app on your phone is one you actually need and use, then how much easier is that going to be to use your phone? You can store things in folders if you wish to, but really just getting rid of stuff you don't use. How many apps are on your phone that you don't need? I bet there's a lot. I bet there's a lot for me. I've got a lot of apps. This is something I definitely need to do. Another one, which I am generally pretty good with because of what I do for work, and that is organizing folders on, it doesn't even have to just be your computer, but folders and filing systems on your phone. Now, my husband is especially bad at this. I'm sure he won't mind me saying, but as organised as I am with my digital filing, he is not at all. I get phone calls from friends and things quite frequently saying, I've just saved this really important thing and it's on my computer in work or on my phone and you're more tech savvy than me. Help, I can't find it. So by having set folders of where to put things and knowing where those folders are might sound really basic, but can save you some real problems in the future. There is nothing more frustrating than having something really important that you need to save and then not being able to find it. Knowing you've saved it, but not being able to find it. You can always use the little search bar within your computer or within your phone to look for a specific document if you know the actual title of it. But honestly, just having a look through, and I'm sure there are plenty of tutorials on YouTube about exactly how you want to do that. If you really need a little bit of help specifically with the technicalities of how to do this, spending a little bit of time, if you're watching something mindless on Netflix, you could spend this time tidying up where your folders are on your phones, perhaps tidying up your photos would be another one, deleting duplicates. There is a facility to do that, or there are apps to do that, where you delete duplicate photos. I don't know about you, but I actually did this recently. I had thousands of duplicate photos. How it had managed to happen, I don't know. I guess it was like double importing things or saving things a second time. But that freed up so much space on my phone. Next one is financial clutter. This can be a number of different things. I've personally tried to switch to paperless statements wherever possible, partly because obviously it helps the environment, but partly because it's just easier to deal with. You can save all of your statements, again, in this filing system that I have set up on my phone, where now I would save, say, credit card or bank statement, specifically those that I need to give to my accountant, into one specific folder. I try and do the same with receipts rather than having paper copies of receipt to take a photograph of it. I used to use Evernote a lot to do this, to save photo versions of things, but the iPhone software now has got so good that it can actually read what's in a photograph anyway, and you can actually search in your photos for specific words. And actually, just on a total tangent, have you ever tried searching for things in your iPhone? It's amazing. Like, you can type kitchen in your iPhone, it will bring up any photo of any time you're in your kitchen, someone else's kitchen, or there is the word kitchen. It's really quite amazing. So if you are looking for something within your photographs, definitely worth doing. Not just searching by faces like it's done for a while, but this kind of AI that it's brought in is pretty darn amazing. Anyway, I digress. Back to financial clutter, which is what we were talking about. Going paperless and then having a decent filing system can save so much space in your actual home. I've actually got a massive amount of paper filing that I still have clung on to because you feel like, oh, this has been sent to me, I need to file it. Whereas really what I need to do is shred all of that, keep it all digital, and save up physical space in my home. So by sorting out your financial clutter, then that can actually save space in your house too. It can also look like just having a bit more awareness of what you're doing. If you have got lots of different cards and things and you're not able to check your statements regularly, you might end up being double charged for something you don't even know about. If you've got everything in one place, you've got all the apps, so even if you're banking with a different place for your credit card or your debit card or different banks or whatever, if you've got all those apps lined up next to each other and you can check each of them in order and you can go, right, check, check. There are even certain apps that you can consolidate all of your different accounts and things onto one place, and you can literally glance at it in one place. But if you're in the habit of being able to do this, you can check your income and your outgoings regularly. You're far more likely to notice if there has been some sort of charge taken. I know scammers take small amounts from lots of different people because they tend to go unnoticed. If someone took a large amount of your account, you're likely to notice quite quickly because you wouldn't have any money. Whereas taking small payments or repeat payments, or even innocently businesses accidentally taking extra payments or people failing to pay you on time, you're not going to notice that if all of your financial stuff is a bit cluttered. Make sure you've got all your logins for all your different banks. That might sound obvious, but I know certain people in my family don't even manage to do that on a regular basis. But make sure you've got those logins, make sure the apps are all there next to each other and updated, and you can go through and check them all regularly. Another financial declutter you can do is going through and cancelling unused subscriptions. So maybe you took up Netflix because you wanted to see Bridgerton. Yes, I might have done that. And then maybe, and Just Like That, which is the Sex and the City reboot, is about to come on Now TV, but maybe you've still forgotten to cancel Netflix. So what I like to do is maybe have 1 or 2 subscriptions on the go as a maximum. It's got to be Disney Plus for us because my children are obsessed, so that's a must. But I wouldn't also want Netflix and Now TV. Before I take on another subscription to watch And Just Like That, I'm going to need to remember to cancel Netflix, and then when I finished watching the stuff I want on Now TV, I can cancel that down and go back to the other one. Otherwise, you just end up with £5 out here, £7 out there, and it all adds up. So by slimming down some of this subscription clutter, you will save yourself loads of money. Especially if it's something you're not even using, then what could be easier than that? And to be honest, between you and me, even subscriptions you do want to keep, sometimes if you press the I want to cancel button, they will say, would you like to save for this special offer? And then you're going to end up getting a little offer for a few months anyway. So it's always worth a little try. Another thing to do with financial clutter is making sure that your contact details are correct on everything. I know this was a big problem for me after we moved. I had all the mail redirected for a good while, and then I had to make sure I'd gone through and updated my address with everything. So if you have moved recently-ish, or even if you haven't moved, perhaps there's been a change of name, perhaps you got married, make sure all your details are absolutely up to date on all of your insurance policies, your banks, all that kind of stuff. So next thing to declutter is your busy schedule. What are you doing that really you could do with saying no to? Now, I talked extensively in a recent video and podcast about boundaries, setting boundaries, and the power of saying no. So make sure you do watch or listen to that when you've got a chance. By starting to say no to things you don't really want to be doing, like maybe your children are doing just too many activities, they don't love them all, it's costing you a fortune, and you're on the road 5 nights a week and it's breaking you. Are there any of those activities that maybe aren't serving them anymore and you could cut back on? By decluttering your calendar a little bit and learning to say no to maybe some obligations, maybe some play dates you just don't have time for because it's just a bit much, or saying no to certain things in work, do you need to look at dropping a day in work? Are you just not managing? Perhaps you're full-time and 4 days would be much more manageable. By clearing your schedule, whatever that's looking like for you, that will help to declutter your life and in turn, your mind. Another thing to declutter is procrastination. Now, I've talked about this before, and I am a recovering procrastinator. It is something that I struggle with still, but I manage quite well, more through habits and discipline. And most of the time, I'm really good at eating the frog. I know I say eat the frog a lot. And if you haven't heard that before, it might sound weird, but the theory with Eat the Frog is if you have to eat a frog, if that's on your to-do list for the day, you want to get that out and over and done with as soon as possible, because that's your yucky task and you'll be so glad when that's done. And if you have to eat 2 frogs, you need to eat the biggest, nastiest, slimiest one first, so that's over and done with. So for me, if I put off exercising till the night, I procrastinate that, then maybe I lose momentum and I just can't be bothered to do it and it never happens. So for me, if I get that done first thing in the morning, I know it's done. So that's one of my Eat the Frog activities. In a work setting, I try and do the most important things first, and those are my Eat the Frog activities. If you're feeling like your whole house needs doing, then your Eat the Frog would be your messiest room, or maybe if you've got guests coming, it's the room that you're going to sit in with them. Procrastination for me has definitely been a massive struggle. Like I said, I'm not struggling with it as much as I used to because I have got this Eat the Frog mentality, which I try and keep front of mind. But for certain things that I find a little overwhelming, I just don't know where to start, then I can still be quite guilty of procrastination. It is definitely something I still need to work on and declutter. So things like when I released my planner, I really struggled because I wanted it to be so good. I wanted it to be the best it could be, that I was procrastinating getting it done because I just couldn't see the wood for the trees. I even got to the stage where I was using it myself, but I just found it so difficult to figure out the mechanics of how I was going to set up a shop and sell it online and take payments and link all that together and send that to the printers, and all of that just seemed so difficult and overwhelming that I ended up procrastinating. And I ended up doing a very similar thing very recently when I was putting together my magical cruise planner for over on my Disney channel. Yes, we're going on a Disney cruise this summer, which I'm very excited about that. And I've had so many people really enjoying my Disney trip planners and they wanted a cruise version. I had people literally asking for this and I was still procrastinating it because I couldn't figure out how to get my head around it. I am delighted to say that my main planner and my Disney trip planners and my cruise planners are now all available to buy. So you can go to mummyof4.com/planners. I will link all that below to check all those out. So just so you know, I am aware that I need to continue to declutter. My procrastination is definitely not a one and done for me. It's something that I innately struggle with. I really fight hard against, but it still creeps in when I find things are really tricky. The next thing you can declutter is a little bit of a social media addiction. I think we can all find ourselves falling into a scroll hole and then thinking, oh my goodness, I've literally sat here for an hour just looking at rubbish. That's not helpful. And then you beat yourselves up. By cutting back on this and decluttering that little habit, we can ultimately find ourselves feeling a little bit better. So for me, I try not to look at social media very first thing in the morning because I don't want to be put on someone else's agenda. And then I do limit my social media consumption. It's awkward for me because it's part of my job. So putting out content I need to do, but consuming content is not part of my job. But in order to put out the content, I have to go onto social media, and then it's easy to try and fall into a bit of a scroll hole, which obviously I do not want to be doing in the middle of the day when I should be working. So I do set up things like screen time limits on my phone just to remind me, you really shouldn't be doing this. And I know you can press a button and override it, but it's just enough of a jolt for me sometimes to be like, wait, there's other things you could be doing now. Healthier habits you could be doing. I'd say even more important than the time you spend on social media, something to declutter on social media is your feed. And I do feel like quite passionately about this really. I think sometimes we end up following maybe accounts of people we don't actually know, or following or being friends with, or whatever it looks like on whichever different platform you're on, people in our real lives that can be really triggering to us. If you're following anyone and anything comes up in your feed that makes you feel anything less than joy, you need to mute or declutter that. So anyone that makes you feel bad because you're comparing yourself to them, or anyone that makes you feel cross because they're moaning, or anyone that drags down your mood, anything that is bringing your energy down rather than building you up, needs to be decluttered from social media for you. Now, this can be really awkward if it's people in your actual life, and they will get offended if you unfriend them, but there is a facility to mute them, hide them from your feed, hide their stories, hide their posts, and I promise you will feel so much better. If you have fully decluttered your social media, so it's just the stuff that you really enjoy and want to see, and then the algorithm keeps sending you more of the same of that, then your social media consumption is going to be such a positive thing rather than a triggering and bringing you down kind of exercise that can really negatively impact your mental health. The other thing you can actually do is make sure you turn on bell notifications for things you do want to see. So that is a good opportunity. If you are watching on my YouTube channel, you can click the bell if you want to see videos from me. If this is something you enjoy, just saying, you can like and you can turn on the bell. And you can engage with things that you want to see more of, and then the algorithm will show you more of that. So you can go onto Instagram, you can ask to turn on notifications for certain posts, you can move them into your favorites, and by engaging with them, by commenting and liking on things you want to see more of, you will see more of those things. So another thing, kind of following on from the decluttering your social media, is decluttering toxic relationships from your life. I'm sure this is something we've all had to deal with at some point. I know I have. It can be really challenging because it kind of fights against our want to be a good girl, we want to be nice, these things we've been brought up to do, be nice to everyone, be a good girl, and not make a fuss. Especially British people, we are terrible about not wanting to be trouble or make a fuss. But sometimes we are in relationships or friendships that just don't serve us. And I'm not suggesting that you are nasty or horrible to these people, but it's okay to distance yourself and not make plans with people that you find triggering in real life as well as on social media. Another thing that you can try and declutter is excessive worrying. Now, this is a whole big, deep topic, obviously, that we're just going to touch on briefly. And I think a lot of us have our own worries. It does make my heart happy that when I went into school recently, there were posters in the school talking about if the children have worries and what they need to do. I love the fact that taking positive steps to take care of our mental health is being introduced from such a young age now. That was not ever discussed when I was in school. So I love that our children are getting that grounding. But as people that did not go to school in such an era that took care of our mental health as well as our physical health, as adults, then perhaps we can be stuck with excessive worrying sometimes that can feel a bit overwhelming, especially as mums. We've got so much on our plates. There's so much expected of us. We've got all the cliches, but the cliches because they're true, about how we're supposed to work like we don't have children and parent like we don't work. There's a lot. The expectations on us are a lot, and that can bring worries and anxieties and things. There are a few things that we can do to take care of this. All the decluttering will actually help ultimately with the worrying because it's clearing up what's on your cognitive load. But you can practice mindfulness. I talked about that extensively when I had my chat with Amy Polly. So if you have not seen that video or checked out that podcast episode, please make sure you do that. That was fantastic. You can do EFT tapping, where you tap on certain parts on your face and your body, and that really helps to calm you down and deal with worries. There are so many really great videos about EFT tapping on YouTube. So just tap in EFT tapping and follow a tutorial. Literally put it on, copy it through. It's amazing. It's a really good technique to learn and to teach and share with your children too. Journaling obviously can really help with worries. Just by writing out the problem and going over it can really help to make it a bit smaller, as can just talking about it. Problem shared, problem halved. Whether you are lucky like me to have a best friend who just gets me and I can talk things through with, I'm so lucky that I have her, or whether that looks like therapy, whatever it might be. Talking things through really does help. I think perhaps as women we're better at doing this than men. That might be a bit of a generalization, but I know that the women I know in my real life are definitely much better at talking about things they're worried about than the men I know. The other thing you can do is actually just label your emotions. I know one of my biggest takeaways so far from my therapy sessions has been that I feel anxiety, not all the time, but in particular situations, specifically where I'm going to deal with a certain person. Literally just be able to say, I am feeling anxious, or I am likely to feel anxious when I'm about to deal with this person. By labeling that, that's allowed me to let it go and declutter it, which has been just revolutionary, really. It's important to declutter peer pressure and to stop being bothered by it. Again, this can be something you can do in your social media declutter. If there's anyone that makes you feel like, oh, I need to be like more like them, I'm never going to be like them, they make you feel bad, you can mute or unfollow that. If there's anyone that you feel that you're having to do things or buy things, not to keep yourself happy, but for what other people might think, you need to perhaps distance yourself from those people, but also look at really why you're making those purchases, why you're doing those things. Is it to serve you and your family? Or is it for someone else? And if you're just doing it to please others, then maybe that's something you need to look at decluttering too. So a tricky one to declutter can be grudges, resentment, and forgiving people that have wronged us. Now, by forgiving people, I don't mean allowing a narcissistic parent that you have distanced yourself from, for example, hypothetically, back into your life. I'm not suggesting that at all. I'm not suggesting that you have to forgive people to their face or even tell them that you're forgiving them for whatever's happened. But forgiveness is for you, not for the person that has wronged or upset you. Now, there's a really nice way of doing this. You can use EFT tapping or journaling or whatever, but there's a Hawaiian kind of like a prayer or a mantra, and there are 4 things in it, 4 elements, and you can use them in any order that you wish. The way I kind of say it is I love you, I'm sorry, I forgive you, thank you, and then you can release it. And you can use this on anything. You can use this on an incident that happened. You can use this to forgive a boss that wronged you. And again, I'm not suggesting you phone up your old boss and tell them this. This is just more like a mental thing for you. And by releasing these negative thoughts that might be holding you back and really upsetting you, then you're going to end up feeling better for yourself. So forgiveness is ultimately to make you feel better as opposed to the person that you're needing to forgive. You can also forgive yourself for things that you've done or things you've beaten yourself up about. And by decluttering all of those resentments you're holding towards other people or the guilt you're holding over something that you've done, you're going to feel so much better. So that's I love you, I'm sorry, I forgive you, thank you, and then let it go. Just like Elsa. So something else that we really probably need to declutter is the negative self-talk. The more that we're saying to ourselves, either out loud or in our heads, it's like, oh, I'm so lazy. Oh, I'm so useless. Oh, I'm so fat. Oh, all these awful things that we say to ourselves, we would never say to our friends. We would never tolerate someone else saying to our friends, and yet we say them to ourselves. If I would not want someone saying these things to my children, why should I say these things to myself? Again, this is something I'm still working on. I think for most of us, this is more of a process than I'm stopping this now. However, I am working on it. By decluttering some negative self-talk, we're going to feel better in ourselves, and we're then able to perhaps set a better example for our children who can hopefully avoid some of the negative self-talk that I think we've all spoken to ourselves as adults from time to time. Thank you for joining me for another episode of Real Talk with Ree. You can catch my latest video or another video I think you may enjoy on screen now. Click over there and I'll see you there. Bye.